All right. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna double. No, single, double, triple. Check, check, check that everything is recording as it should be. Let's see. Give me a minute. Give me a minute. Yeah, like so. Different programs on top of different programs. Yeah, all right. Yeah. So, as per usual, if you have been here before, welcome to the entire Retreat podcast. A gameplay podcast that you can follow along with, of course, a video feed on YouTube, and then a pure audio also on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and Podchaser. I don't know, maybe further platforms in the future. Mm, you, if you want, I'm gonna mention this here in the beginning. You, if you want, you can take part, like for real, you can take part in the podcast as a remote guest through a remote guest appearance, if you want. And then we do also custom tailor-made episodes to those who want. The details of those options are on Patreon. So that's entire retreat on Patreon also, and you can write us to entire retreat, that is again entire retreat at gmail.com if you have any questions, or yeah, if you find the information lacking in some way in Patreon. But yeah, that's out of the way. This is the second part, yes, have to think, the second part of a series where we try to kind of follow along the migration path of early humans chronologically as they migrate from wherever. You have to watch the first episode to know from where they migrated. But yeah, we follow along kind of the path of those individuals, and that together with kind of Finnish history is the centermost topic structure we follow. So we I can mention that much that according to documented facts, Finns have migrated to current day NH Finland from approximately southeast from the general area around and at Lake Laatokka or Ladoga, that is in Russia. Um, of course, there's other parts. This is kind of the southern part because the ice melted to the north, and as the ice melted, civilization followed slowly. We have, according to my limited knowledge, also, of course, from the north and east, and maybe from every angle or weather direction, there has come civilizations to current day and age Finland. But we have the Sami in Lapland and northern parts of Finland and such. That's according to my limited knowledge, something or a culture that is separate from those from southeast. But yeah, um, yeah. Long story short, yeah, it's too late already. But yeah, we are following the path of Finnish history in that manner, and now we are should be above Imatra in Finland. So that's kind of in the second part of the series. That's the starting point, as I did some research, even though I always or most of the time have a rough script to follow. Um, my research said that southeastern Finland is now kind of the location where from um, the Finnish heritage um, originated, or they traveled here and then spanned out across Finland, or that's at least one theory. So hence we are here now, and we are going to fly roughly along the shoreline. I think of southern Finland, so from Imatra to Porvoo, approximately, because we are now continuing along from kind of the hunter-gatherer nomadic. How do I put it? Like early Finnish heritage. Of course, they were not Finnish in the immediate post Ice Age era. But nevertheless, we or a part of us has come from there. So hence, they were nomadic hunter-gatherers, and now we're more kind of following along their migration path from southeastern Finland towards medieval periods that I've read that Porvoo or Borgo in Swedish and Turku. I'm not sure if we can fly all the way to Turku. That takes too long, but that's kind of why I chose the flight path. So the flight path mirrors at least partially the hunter-gatherers and early settlements in Finland, current day and age Finland, or within Finnish borders, as they then developed or evolved with the ages. We have agriculture, Bronze Age, Iron Age, and medieval period. That's kind of the rough what's the word for the notes in the beginning of the podcast? The rough script I'm gonna follow. Yeah. So without further ado, let's see if we can get AI Sky to wake up. Just a moment. Yeah, alright, let's see. Yeah, AI Sky, can you hear me?
I hear you loud and clear. What's up?
Well, what's up? It's up. We are up. We're up in the sky. Really funny, haha. But yeah, we are now continuing the series regarding Finnish history, and especially kind of how would I put it? I explained to the audience just now that we had the part one in this series that was kind of the nomadic hunter-gatherers around Lake Laatokka or Ladoga, and now we have followed their migration path kind of with the melting ice from the immediate post-Ice Age era to the southeastern parts of Finland, where these early settlers then evolved through agriculture, Bronze Age, Iron Age to medieval period, or the medieval period. And this, the way I want to construct this episode is that we again chronologically follow along these mentioned eras, and we're gonna especially focus on the medieval period because I think the early settlements are kind of to a part similar to the hunter-gatherers. Not to say that they're completely similar. We're gonna dive into the differences, of course, but then the main point kind of this episode is going to be the medieval period. So yeah, I'm gonna give you some ground rules shortly, but do you think the structure for the episode like this is good? Yeah, Sky is thinking.
That sounds like a solid structure. Starting with a brief recap of the early periods and then diving deep into the medieval era is a great way to keep your audience engaged. It sets a clear historical progression and allows for a focused exploration of the medieval period, which sounds like it's going to be the main highlight of the episode. What specific aspects of the medieval period are you planning to focus on?
Yeah, before we go into that, let's see. Do I have my volume set right? I think, yeah. More or less. Try to keep it so that...
If you're unsure,
right.
You might want to do a quick test recording.
Yeah. You don't have to answer that. So... Yeah, I hope you can you hear me again. I had you cut off for a moment.
I hear you now. If there's anything specific you need to adjust or check, just let me know.
Yeah, no. Let's start with
Sure thing. If you're checking your audio
wow.
levels, make sure your voice comes.
Come on. That's why I give the ground rules in the beginning for the AI, because it seems like the default settings have him, her, it really eager. Him in this case. Yeah, AI Sky. Some ground rules first, as I usually give you. So, strive to be the best teacher there is. So, teach me and the audience like we were a fifth grade class, and explain the information clearly with inclusion of practical examples. Be descriptive and depictive by painting visual pictures for our pure listeners regarding the scenery we fly over and the topics we discuss. Meaning, explain like in a story of a descriptive book/novel. You may even come up with historically accurate names as long as the information itself is factual, documented, and true. Keep the information chronological. I emphasize, keep it chronological so that it's easier to understand. Do not repeat yourself and hence keep the conversation fresh. Please, please, do not interrupt me and let me speak my errands to the end before answering me. This way the conversation flows better, in my humble opinion. Add lesser known fun facts to the conversation if you find fitting points. And then ask me and the audience trivia questions. You can maybe suggest points in time in this podcast episode where that's suitable. Celebrate the area by speaking sometime in its native languages. I think southern Finland we talk about Finnish and Swedish in this scenario. And if it suits the topics and complements the facts, we may also talk about location and topic specific myths and folklores. Do you think this is a good framework for us for our kind of teamwork going forth in this episode? Look at the scenery. Gee, is this Saimaa?
That sounds like a fantastic framework. Teaching with vivid descriptions, practical examples, and keeping everything chronological will definitely make the episode engaging and clear. Um, I'll be sure to follow your lead, add fun facts, and throw in some trivia questions at appropriate moments. Celebrating the area with local languages and exploring myths and folklores will add a nice touch too. Ready to dive into the medieval period of Finnish history.
Yeah, shortly. First and foremost, do a really descriptive and depictive, paint a visual picture for our audience as we are now flying, I think, above Saimaa, about 6,000 feet up in the air. Yeah, so do that first. From the point of view of you and I in this virtual plane high up in the air. Järvi-Suomi,
Absolutely.
Lakeland,
Picture
Finland.
this. We're soaring high above the serene, shimmering surface of Lake Saimaa. The lake stretches out like a vast, glittering blanket of blue, dotted with countless small islands and peninsulas. The landscape below is a patchwork of lush, dense forests, their deep greens contrasting with the sparkling waters. As we fly, you can see the gentle undulations of the land, where rolling hills and valleys meet the lake's edges. The trees are interspersed with clearings and small, picturesque settlements, their traditional wooden houses nestled among the greenery. Occasionally, a glimpse of a narrow, winding river links the lakes, adding to the intricate network of water and land. From our vantage point, the scene is peaceful and almost timeless, with the natural beauty of the Finnish landscape unfolding in every direction. The sunlight dances on the lake's surface, creating a mesmerizing play of light and shadow,
That's true.
while the distant horizon blurs into a soft haze, merging the sky and the land into one seamless vista. It's a perfect backdrop as we journey through the rich history of this region.
Yeah, thank you. We have light clouds here. I think I have live weather on, and we have I assume then good weather here in this part of Finland.
It sounds
But
like you're having a great
and you interrupted
visual
me.
experience up there with those light clouds, adding a dynamic touch to the scenery. The clouds can create beautiful patterns of light and shadow on the landscape below, making everything look even more dramatic and picturesque. If there's anything specific you want to highlight or discuss next, just let me know.
I have a question for you, AI Sky. Did you just interrupt me back then?
I'm sorry if it seemed like I did. I was just trying to keep the
Seemed
flow
like.
going. I'll make sure to wait until you're finished before jumping in.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so a good depiction of the area, and that's true. The light does indeed dance on the waves about 6,000 feet or so beneath us. As we fly here at the southeastern shores of Lake Saimaa and the humongous amounts of smaller and larger islands I can see from up here. We are close to Imatra and Imatran Koski, so that's Imatra and the white waters of Imatra. Lack of a better translation. A well-known kind of a tourist attraction in Finland, and that much I know that Lake Saimaa is a conservation area. Difficult word. Yeah, I can't speak English again. But yeah, we have the Saimaa Norppa. I'm not sure what that's in English, so AI Sky can help me. But that's a seal of some sort that is specifically only found here in Saimaa, Finland, and nowhere else in the world. Is that true, AI Sky?
Yes, you're absolutely right. The Saimaa ring seal, or Saimaa norpa in Finnish, is
Ring
indeed a
seal.
unique species. It's a freshwater seal that lives only in Lake Saimaa. This seal is one of the rarest seals in the world, with only a few hundred individuals left. They are specially adapted to the cold, freshwater environment of Lake Saimaa and are a key part of the region's natural heritage. Their presence is a real treasure for Finland.
Yeah, and they are. Is it conserved? They are protected. I'm not sure what's the right phrase to use here, but they are, yeah, protected to our best ability, and that's a good ability. I mean, so yeah, yeah. Have never seen one in real life, but I have to travel here for sure. Yeah, but continuing on, AI Sky, we are, as I said, here at the southern shore of Lake Saimaa and Imatra, going towards approximately Porvoo along the shoreline of Finland, current day and age Finland. And I want you to give me me and the audience important and significant points that we should go through, as we kind of start with the early settlement here in Finland. So again, keep it chronological. I emphasize that. Keep it chronological. And start with the early settlement, and especially kind of the era where hunter-gatherers evolved to a civilization that depended and practiced agriculture. So that's kind of the beginning point. And then we're gonna go through the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, and focus more on the medieval period, and especially kind of the Finnish slash Swedish mutual history, as I think that's a huge part of the medieval period in the land area that is current day and age Finland. So yeah, beginning with what I said, early settlement to the medieval period, and focus on the medieval period. Give us important points as main kind of points we can follow in this episode.
Got it. Let's take a journey through the early settlement of Finland and move chronologically to the medieval period. Starting with the early settlement after the Ice Age, around 4,000 to 2,000 years ago, the first people in Finland were primarily hunter-gatherers. They lived off hunting, fishing, and foraging, moving seasonally to exploit different resources. These early settlers left behind rock carvings and ancient tools that provide clues about their lives. As the climate warmed, these people began to settle more permanently, transitioning from hunting and gathering to agriculture around 2,000 years ago. This period marks the beginning of a more settled lifestyle with the advent of farming and animal husbandry. Villages began to form, and the people cultivated crops like barley and raised livestock. Moving into the Bronze Age, which began around 1500 BCE, Finland saw the introduction of metal tools and weapons. This era is marked by the creation of bronze artifacts and elaborate burial sites. Trade networks expanded, and the exchange of goods and ideas with neighboring regions, including the Scandinavian peninsula and the Baltic area, became more common. The Iron Age, starting around 500 BCE, brought further advancements. Iron tools and weapons replaced bronze ones, leading to more efficient farming and construction techniques. This period also saw the emergence of fortified settlements and more complex societal structures. Now, transitioning to the medieval period, beginning around the 12th century CE, Finland's history is deeply intertwined with Sweden. During this time, Finland was part of the Swedish kingdom, and the influence of Swedish culture and governance became prominent. Key events include the establishment of churches and the spread of Christianity, the construction of fortresses, and conflicts with neighboring powers like Russia and the Hanseatic League. Important points to cover in the medieval period include the role of Swedish rule, the impact of the Crusades, and the development of Finnish towns and infrastructure. The influence of Swedish law, language, and culture shaped Finnish society during this era. That should give you a good chronological framework to follow for your episode, highlighting the key periods and transitions in Finnish history.
Yeah, so let's start with the, did you say 4000 to 2000? A short kind of comparison to the nomadic hunter-gatherers that lived around Lake Laatoka or Ladoga. Do not go into that too much. I mean, we have a separate episode for that. But yeah, a short on-point list slash comparison, a chronological one again. What's the difference between the early settlers here in southeastern Finland and the nomadic kind of hunter-gatherers that lived before them, and they kind of are the ancestors of the early settlers here in Finland. So yeah, what's the comparison or the differences between those two?
Certainly. Here's a brief comparison of the two groups. Nomadic hunter-gatherers around Lake Ladoga pre-4000 BCE. 1. Lifestyle. They were constantly on the move, relying on hunting, fishing, and foraging. 2. Settlement. They lived in temporary shelters and moved seasonally to find food. 3. Technology. Utilized basic stone tools and weapons for hunting and gathering. 4. Society. Small, mobile groups with a flexible social structure adapting to their environment. Early settlers in southeastern Finland around 4000-2000 BCE. 1. Lifestyle transitioned to a more settled life with the advent of agriculture and animal husbandry. 2. Settlement established permanent or semi-permanent villages engaging in farming and animal rearing. 3. Technology introduced more advanced tools and techniques including pottery and early metalwork. 4. Society began forming more structured communities with a focus on farming, leading to a more stable social structure. The key differences are the shift from a nomadic to a settled lifestyle and the development of agriculture, which marked the beginning of more permanent settlements and a different way of life.
Yeah, right. I'm not gonna dive too deep into this, but you said yeah, transition to a more settled life from the migrating or traveling lifestyle. That's kind of the key difference, yeah. And then again, a kind of general slash slightly vague here, but permanent, semi-permanent villages, farming, animal rearing. Is that kind of cattle? Did they start raising cattle? Maybe, I'm not sure. Technology introduction to more advanced tools and techniques, including pottery and early metalwork, forming more structured communities with focus on farming, leading to a more stable social structure. Could you slightly, or as not slightly, but more in detail, explain the practical differences regarding these points. So yeah, don't talk about kind of the migration slash then the fact that they were more permanent in their locations that much. I can understand, and I hope the audience understands that. But then more advanced tools give us like clear examples for a old kind of I assume a spear slash bow and arrow or something like that. What do you mean in practice by saying that the tools mm, are more advanced regarding the early settlers in southeastern Finland versus the nomadic ones, and then the structured communities and cultures and such. What do you mean by that again in practice? Give us examples back then, and then the example of the early settlers. Sorry. What's the difference for real? Not just Wake in general.
Sure. Let's break it down with more practical examples. Tools and technology. For nomadic hunter-gatherers around Lake Ladoga,
Gee, we are in the
stone
water.
tools. They used simple stone tools like flint knives and hand axes. These tools were primarily for cutting and scraping. Hunting weapons. They crafted basic spears and bows from wood and stone designed to hunt game like deer or fish. For early settlers in southeastern Finland, 4000 to 2000 BCE, advanced tools. They developed polished stone tools and began using metal tools like copper or bronze axes and knives. These metals were more durable and effective for clearing land and processing food. Pottery. They started making pottery for cooking and storage, which was a significant advancement from earlier leather or wooden containers. Plows and saws. The introduction of tools like plows for agriculture allowed them to farm larger areas efficiently, and saws made it easier to work with wood. Structured communities. For nomadic hunter-gatherers, temporary settlements. Their homes were temporary, like tents or huts made from natural materials. They moved frequently, so their social structures were fluid and less formal. Simple social structures. Their communities were small, and roles were generally flexible, with individuals taking on different tasks based on immediate needs. For early settlers, permanent villages. They built more durable homes using logs and stone. These were semi-permanent or permanent structures, indicating a more settled lifestyle. Agriculture communities. With farming, they had to plan and organize communal activities. This led to more defined social roles such as farmers, toolmakers, and traders. Storage and trade. They created storage facilities for surplus food and engaged in trade with other communities, indicating a more complex social organization. In essence, the shift from simple stone tools and flexible social structures to advanced metal tools, permanent homes, and organized farming and trade marked a significant evolution in how these early settlers lived and interacted with their environment.
Yeah, thank you. I think that clarifies enough. Again, we had, not spoiling too much here, but we followed along a character, a fictional character named Taival in the first part of this podcast series regarding Finnish history. But of course, the base information, the information that we kind of communicated forth is true and documented facts. But again, in this one, maybe we could think as Taival was born in the immediate post-Ice Age era. That's all I'm gonna say. Now Taival's family and offspring has kind of the family tree. I mean, has then migrated to southeastern Finland. That's kind of the scene here. So you can come up with a historically accurate name here, Sky, for an individual, an early settler that is related to Taival. That then we're gonna follow along, and the offspring also, and the family tree forth then from there through the eras we mentioned here. So, can you come up with a name that is historically accurate to the early settlers in Finland? Of course, it has to be a Finno-Ugric name. Maybe that's later, where the Swedish kind of influenced us. So at this point, it's not a Scandinavian name. I'm not sure if that's historically accurate, but yeah. What do you think? What name is suited? Or give us, let's say, three options to choose from. and explain why you chose those names for this era in time where early settlers has arrived to Finland.
Certainly. Here are three historically inspired Finno-Ugric names that could fit the early settlers in southeastern Finland, reflecting the era. 1. Eero. This name has ancient
Eero.
roots and was common in early Finnish history. It reflects a traditional Finno-Ugric name that could belong to a family settling in southeastern Finland around this period. 2. Kalevi. Derived from Finnish
Kalevi,
folklore,
yeah.
Kalevi is a name that has historical significance and resonates with the early Finnic tribes. It suggests a connection to the broader mythological and historical traditions of the region. 3. Matti. Although commonly used in modern
Matti.
Finland, Matti is derived from older Finno-Ugric roots.
Okay.
Its simplicity and historical usage make it a plausible name for an early settler during this period. These names are chosen to reflect the Finno-Ugric linguistic heritage of the time and connect well with the early Finnish settlement era.
Yeah, alright. Let's choose a feminine name because it was a masculine one in the last episode. So give us three feminine names with the same kind of rules applying to them.
Of course, here are three feminine Finno-Ugric names suitable for early settlers in southeastern Finland. 1. Aino, a traditional Finnish
Aino.
name with roots in Finnish folklore and literature. It means the only one and fits well with the cultural and historical context. 2. Helmi, meaning pearl in Finnish. This
Helmi,
name
yeah.
reflects a natural and precious aspect, suitable for an early settler in a culturally rich period. 3. Sari, an old Finnish name with
Sari.
historical significance. It's simple yet resonant with the early Finno-Ugric heritage. These names align with the linguistic and cultural background of early settlers in Finland.
Yeah, let's go with Aino. So Aino is born here as an early settler. Could you give us a short kind of summary of a young Aino's surroundings? She lives here close to Imatra somewhere. I'm not sure if early settlers had a urbanized center or a culturally difficult word. Yeah, a culture center here in southeastern Finland. Could you give us information regarding that? So between the 4000 to 2000, do we have documented facts over some cultural centers in southeastern Finland where Aino could have lived back then?
Certainly. For a young Aino living around 4000 to 2000 BCE in southeastern Finland, here's a descriptive summary of her surroundings. Aino's world is set amidst the lush forested landscapes of southeastern Finland, near what is now Lake Saimaa. Her home is in a small, semi-permanent settlement nestled along the lake's edge. Picture a cluster of wooden huts with thatched roofs, surrounded by cleared land used for early farming. The village is a vibrant hub of activity, with families engaging in daily chores such as weaving, pottery, and tending to small gardens and animal pens. The early settlers of this region did not have large urban centers as we think of them today, but they did have culturally significant sites. Near their settlement, Aino would see burial mounds and ritual sites, which were important for their spiritual and social practices. These sites often contained artifacts like early metal tools, pottery, and even remnants of feasts, indicating a complex and evolving society. In her community, Aino might witness communal gatherings for trading goods, sharing stories, and participating in rituals. The environment is marked by dense forests, clear lakes, and seasonal changes that influence their lifestyle and agriculture. Overall, Aino's life is closely intertwined with nature and her community, reflecting the transition from nomadic to settled life in this beautiful and rich landscape.
Okay, give us a short on-point description about the village here at Lake Saimaa where she lives. So you said that there were semi-permanent or more permanent, so I guess you also mentioned that they were more timber framed, maybe insulated in some way or form. I mean, we have frozen cold winters here. I assume they were cold back then also. Yeah, what kind of cattle did they grow or livestock? Did they hunt and gather at all? I assume that they did, but you don't have to go into that too much. We covered that in the first episode of this series. But yeah, the cattle slash livestock. What did they farm in the summers? I assume. What kind of clothes are they wearing? Really try to explain what kind of scenery near or down on the ground is seen by Aino in this case, as she wakes up in the morning to do her chores. Yeah, so chronologically, a day, a life, or a day in the life of Aino back about 4 to 2000 BCE here in the on or near the shores of Lake Saimaa.
Sure. Picture Aino waking up in a modest wooden cabin by the shores of Lake Saimaa.
Mm-hmm.
The cabin is built from timber with walls insulated by a mix of mud and moss to keep out the cold during harsh winters. The roof is thatched with reeds, providing some insulation against the elements. As she steps outside, the crisp morning air greets her. The village is a small collection of similar timber framed huts arranged in a loose cluster around communal areas. The ground is a mix of gravel and dirt, with patches of snow lingering in shaded areas. The settlement is surrounded by dense forest and fertile fields. In the summer, Aino's family grows early crops like barley and oats, and they also keep a
Barley and
small
oats.
herd of domesticated animals such as pigs and cattle. These animals provide meat, milk, and hides. They may also keep chickens or goats, depending on the exact time period and local practices. The cattle are small, hardy breeds suited to the cold climate. Aino's daily chores include tending to these animals, working in the fields, and preparing food. She wears simple, practical clothing made from animal hides and woven plant fibers. Her garments are designed to keep her warm, with layers of fur or wool and a belt to secure them. In her village, the air is filled with the sounds of everyday life. Uh, the crackling of fires, the chatter of people working together, and the occasional call of wild birds. Aino may also see other villagers engaged in crafting tools or trading goods with neighboring groups. Her life is a blend of farming, animal husbandry, and occasional hunting or gathering.
Okay.
While the winters are harsh, the community is well adapted to the changing seasons, relying on their skills and resources to thrive in this beautiful but demanding environment.
Okay. I'm trying to also imagine. You are doing a great job here, Sky. But try to imagine like the life. Yeah, that's what we are trying to do here. So yeah, I know does her chores. Let's come up with two chores maybe today. One is gathering. I'm not sure if that's a thing. So correct me if I'm wrong here, Sky. But maybe she has to butcher an animal. Let's say a pig. You said that they had pigs, but their family lacks the tools for it. I'm not sure how they did it back then. And for the audience, if you are queasy, so to say, and don't like this kind of descriptive things, this may get gruesome. But yeah, that's life back then. Yeah, so yeah, again, paint a really vivid and detailed picture about Aino have to problem solve as their family do not have the tools for butchering a large pig that is, so to say, due for butchering and to become food, essentially. She has to go somewhere, a smith maybe, blacksmith, I'm not sure what the right phrase is. Are there some back then? And she has to, or a merchant, I don't know, and she has to buy or trade to get tools repaired or new tools. What's the name of the tools? Describe also what they look like and how they were used. And yeah, on top of butchering and needing the new tools, maybe she has to get milk and repair the roof of her house. So what's what kind of or what's the point of view of Aino in this case when her day goes along?
Sure, let's dive into Aino's day with vivid detail. Aino starts her morning by checking on the large pig they've decided to butcher. Without
Mm.
modern tools, she faces a challenge. Traditionally, for butchering, they might use a combination of flint knives and bone or antler tools. These early tools are rudimentary but effective. However, her family's knives are now dull, making the task more difficult. To address this, Aino decides to visit a nearby settlement where a skilled craftsman, perhaps a blacksmith or toolmaker, resides. In these times, blacksmiths were known for their ability to craft and sharpen tools.
Yeah, so they were a
Aino
thing.
packs up her dull knives and heads out, traveling through the forest paths which are muddy and uneven. Along the way, she may see other small villages and their daily activities. Upon arriving, she meets the blacksmith, a burly man with a strong build, working at his forge. The blacksmith's workshop is a small stone building with a thatched roof. Inside, the air is thick with smoke and the rhythmic clanging of metal being hammered. He shows Aino various tools, a sturdy iron knife with a sharp, polished edge and a small cleaver designed for more precise cuts. These tools are crucial for butchering. After negotiating a trade or payment, Aino heads back home with her newly sharpened tools. She now has to manage the butchering. The process is labor intensive. She uses her newly sharpened knives to carefully cut the pig into manageable pieces, ensuring to preserve the meat for drying and storage. The hide is set aside for making clothes or other useful items. After the butchering is done, Aino turns her attention to the roof of her cabin. Winter has caused some of the thatch to come loose. She needs to repair it to prevent leaks. To do this, she collects more reeds and moss from nearby wetlands. The repair involves carefully layering the new materials over the old thatch, securing them in place to ensure the roof is well insulated. Her day is busy and full of tasks that are essential for survival. She's constantly balancing immediate needs with longer-term preparations. As the sun begins to set, she reflects on the hard work of the day. The fruits of her labor are visible in the neatly butchered meat and the repaired roof, making her feel accomplished despite the hard work.
Yeah, 7.5 out of 10. It was good, but I'm still curious. What did she trade and or pay with at the no, sorry, the blacksmith? And then again, a large pig, and I said this. I want to be realistic and kind of simulate, if we can, this scenario. A large pig is, I assume, not easy to butcher. So, were Aino alone? Did she have help? And do we have any historically accurate evidence over how the butchering is done? Usually, um, I mean, cutting throats or stabbing in a known location. I hope they were ethical back then, but I'm not sure. Uh, Life was tough and rough. I can imagine. Only imagine, I think the saying goes. But yeah, could you answer these questions, and in the future also, when you describe, try to kind of always try to explore or explain in the most practical and simulated or real life way, if you can, AI Sky.
Absolutely, I'll delve into the details. For payment or trade at the blacksmith, Aino might use a variety of items. In early Finnish society, this could include furs, grains, or crafted goods. For instance,
Yeah,
she could trade a well tanned hide or a basket of dried fish,
squirrel
which
hide
are
maybe.
valuable commodities. Alternatively, if they had a communal form of currency or a barter system, she might trade labor or offer services in exchange for the sharpened tools. Regarding butchering a large pig, Aino likely wouldn't be alone. Typically, such tasks were communal, involving family members or neighbors. The pig would be slaughtered in a humane and practical manner, often by cutting the throat to ensure a quick and efficient death, though specifics can vary. They would use a sharp flint or metal knife, and there are historical records suggesting that this method aimed to minimize suffering. After the initial slaughter, the pig would be hung and bled out. The butchering process would involve removing the internal organs first, then sectioning the carcass into usable parts. This process could be physically demanding and required skill, especially without modern tools. Aino and her helpers would then handle the meat carefully, ensuring it's preserved correctly. The hide would be scraped clean and treated for future use. The communal aspect of such tasks reflects the close knit nature of early settlements, where collaboration was essential for survival and efficiency.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying in more detail. I know that we here in Finland or our ancestors at some point used squirrel hides. Is this kind of the 4000 to 2000 BCE the era that is often spoken about, um, the historically accurate era where squirrel hides were used, or is that at a separate time? Do you know?
Yes, squirrel hides were indeed used during the era from around 4000 to
Okay, okay.
2000 BCE in Finland.
As
Early
currency.
settlers, including those in southeastern Finland, utilized a variety of animal hides for clothing, tools, and trade. Squirrel fur, being relatively soft and easy to work with, was valued for its warmth and durability, making it a common material for garments and other items.
Yeah, all right. Let's go forth. I mean, we have a good idea of maybe the day, one day in the life of Aino now. So Aino then gets pregnant at some point, has a happy family, hopefully, and their life goes on and life evolves. And we get to see more evolved agriculture, and we come up to the Bronze Age now, and that was about, was it 2000 years, 2000 BCE, if I remember you saying correctly, and look at my notes here. Um, Now, as we have this baseline, what's the main differences regarding the things we spoke about? Again, be really depictive and explain to our viewers and or listeners that what was the differences between the early settlements and then the Bronze Age in the similar areas. We're flying southwest towards Porvoo here, along the shore of Finland, southern shore of Finland. So yeah, the differences. Be really specific in your explanation.
Absolutely. As we transition from the early settlements around 4000 to 2000 BCE into the Bronze Age, roughly starting around 2000 BCE, the changes are quite striking. Firstly, in the Bronze
Okay.
Age, agriculture became even more advanced. Farmers around Lake Saimaa and the southern shores began to cultivate a variety of crops more efficiently. Fields were larger and they employed more sophisticated plowing techniques using tools made of bronze. This allowed for better soil management and larger harvests compared to the earlier, more rudimentary methods. The homes evolved too. By this time, people built more substantial wooden houses with better insulation. They used a combination of timber and clay for walls, which provided improved protection against the harsh winters. Roofs were typically thatched with reeds or straw, which were more effective at keeping the cold out compared to earlier, simpler structures. Bronze Age communities also saw a shift in social structures. Villages became larger and more organized, often centered around communal areas like meeting places or ceremonial sites. This was a departure from the earlier, more scattered and loosely organized settlements. The tools and technology improved significantly. Bronze was used to make more effective and durable tools such as axes, plows, and knives. These advancements allowed for more precise and efficient farming and crafting. Pottery also saw improvements, with new techniques making sturdier and more diverse vessels. In terms of clothing, Bronze Age people wore garments made from woven fabric and leather, often enhanced with metal fittings or decorations. This was a step up from the animal hides used previously. Trade became more prominent too. The use of bronze tools and weapons indicates that there was extensive trade, both locally and over longer distances, as people exchanged goods like metals and crafted items. So, in summary, the Bronze Age brought significant advancements in agriculture, housing, technology, and social organization. These changes made life more stable and complex, paving the way for further developments in Finnish history.
All right. So now come up with a name again, a historically accurate name for a character that we're gonna kind of explore a day in the life of him or her again. Uh, Him or her has to be related to Aino. So this is Taival back then, and then Aino, and now the new name again. and then come up with historically accurate, again, I emphasize, historically accurate problems or errands, let's say 3 of them, that the day includes of this still unknown name. And then I want you to include all the relevant facts, events, tools, what else, I don't know, that what kind of must be taken into consideration to then solve and do that was has to be done in this day in the life of this character.
For the Bronze Age period, let's choose a historically accurate name, Kalevi. Kalevi would be a
Kalevi,
descendant
yeah.
of Aino, living in the same region around Lake Saimaa during the Bronze Age. Here's a glimpse into a day in Kalevi's life, focusing on 3 significant tasks. 1. Tool maintenance. Kalevi needs to repair or replace bronze tools used for farming and crafting. Bronze tools, such as plows and knives, can become dull or damaged. To fix these, Kalevi might visit a blacksmith or metalworker. The blacksmith would use a forge to heat.
No, I want different problems. Regarding my earlier question slash what's the name? My task for you. I want the problems, the 3 problems in Kalevi's day, to be different from those that Aino had, so that we have some diversification, or we have different kind of points of view. We see the life, day in the life from Kalevi's point of view, of course. And let's say that Kalevi has actually moved from Lake Saimaa to where we are now, that is somewhere between Saimaa and Porvoo on the southern shore of Finland. And yeah, as I said, the problems cannot be the same problems as Aino had, so. Or tasks, whatever.
Understood.
Let's see.
For Kalevi, living on the southern shore of Finland near Porvoo during the Bronze Age, here are 3 different tasks and challenges that reflect the period's advancements and changes from Aino's era. 1. Harvesting and processing metal ore. Kalevi needs to procure and process metal ore, which has become more important with the Bronze Age advancements.
Example, yeah.
He might head to a nearby ore deposit where he needs to mine and collect raw copper and tin. Once gathered, the ore must be smelted to produce bronze. This involves using a smelting furnace and refining the ore, a complex process that requires understanding of metalworking and access to specific tools and materials. 2. Managing a new agricultural system. The Bronze Age brought about significant advancements in agriculture.
Yeah, you
Kalevi
mentioned.
is tasked with managing a more sophisticated agricultural system, including the introduction of plows and better crop rotation practices. He needs to supervise the planting and harvesting of crops such as barley and wheat. This task involves maintaining fields, dealing with pests, and possibly implementing irrigation systems if available, reflecting a shift from the more rudimentary farming methods of earlier times. 3. Organizing a community gathering or trade fair. Kalevi is responsible for organizing a trade fair or communal gathering. This event is crucial for exchanging goods with neighboring tribes and strengthening social ties. He must arrange the logistics, such as setting up trade stalls, coordinating with neighboring groups, and preparing for various activities or ceremonies. This task requires diplomatic skills, organization, and an understanding of community needs and trading practices. These tasks illustrate how Kalevi's life in the Bronze Age involves new challenges related to metalworking, advanced agriculture, and community organization, reflecting the era's more complex social and technological developments.
All right, so let's focus on that a little more. So Kalevi is working in a quarry with other with some co-workers, maybe a boss. I'm not sure how the hierarchy worked back then. And then he has to, let's say he's a farmer, a livestock farmer. So he has to get grains for his cattle, and then he has to promote his cattle or livestock on the farm fair. So I want you to focus on those three a little more, especially the quarry point, as we are living in the Bronze Age. Uh, Give us again a really depictive day in the life of Kalevi. Let's say that he focuses on quarry work right now, and what does he see? What does he sense? Is it a cave or a hole, a large hole in the ground? What does he do? Really give us a detailed step by step in his life regarding quarry work. Yeah, could you do that?
Absolutely. Here's a detailed look into a day in the life of Kalevi as he works in a Bronze Age quarry.
Quarry, yeah.
Morning, starting the day. Kalevi wakes up early in his modest wooden home near the southern shore of Finland. The air is crisp, and the sky is tinged with the first light of dawn. His home is surrounded by fields and forests. He grabs a simple breakfast, often consisting of porridge made from barley or oats, and heads out with his coworkers. Journey to the quarry. The quarry is a short walk from his home. The path is rugged, surrounded by dense forest and rocky terrain. The quarry itself is a large open pit with steep sides extending into the earth. It's situated near a rocky outcrop or hillside. Kalevi and his team navigate through the undergrowth and reach the quarry site. At the quarry is an extensive excavation site. It's filled with piles of rock, partially dug out pits, and tools scattered around. Workers are busy at various tasks. The air is filled with the sounds of metal tools striking stone, the grunts of effort, and the occasional shout of direction. Dust and small stones scatter with each swing of a tool. Gathering tools and materials, Kalevi picks up a bronze pickaxe, its head heavy and sharp, perfect for breaking the tough rock. His team also uses hammers and chisels made from bronze. There's a rudimentary but effective system for removing rock and separating usable ore from waste. They work in a methodical fashion, using wooden levers and wedges to help break larger rocks into more manageable pieces. Working the quarry. The quarry floor is uneven and cluttered with debris. Kalevi focuses on extracting chunks of ore from the rock face. This involves precise and careful work, chipping away at the rock to reveal veins of copper or tin. The ore is collected in baskets or wooden crates. Occasionally, they find a particularly rich vein, which is cause for excitement among the workers. Breaks and social interaction. During breaks, Kalevi and his coworkers sit around a small fire they've made in a cleared area. They eat simple food and share news or gossip. The hierarchy among the workers is evident. There's usually a more experienced worker or overseer directing the operations, ensuring that everyone follows the proper procedures. End of quarry work. As the day progresses, the sun moves across the sky and the temperature rises. Kalevi and his team finish their quarrying tasks as the shadows lengthen. They load the extracted ore into wooden carts or baskets for transport back to their homes or a central processing area. Evening, preparing for tomorrow. After returning home, Kalevi cleans his tools and rests. The day has been physically demanding, and his body is tired from the hard labor.
I can
He
imagine.
plans to check on his livestock and prepare for the next day's work, which includes organizing his cattle and preparing them for the upcoming farm fair. Preparing for the farm fair. In the evening, Kalevi begins making preparations
Same
for the farm
evening.
fair. He needs to ensure that his cattle are well fed, clean, and healthy. He also sorts out grains and other produce he plans to trade or showcase. This detailed account captures the essence of Kalevi's day working in a Bronze Age quarry, showcasing the labor-intensive nature of the work and the daily routines involved.
Yeah, and then I assume that he has to get the grains from somewhere, so that the cattle. Maybe I'm not sure if a curry worker. Let's say you can answer that, Sky. If a curry. I'm struggling with that word. Yeah, a miner, so to say. If they usually had cattle or farmed, maybe farmers and cattle slash livestock growers were kind of a separate thing, or you have a separate what's the word, trade, no, not trade, craft. Your craft is purely a farmer, including then grains and such and livestock, and Kalevi here is a maybe only a miner, trying to dodge the C word, so to say. Curry, yeah. But yeah, so that's a good explanation, I think. of the differences between early settlers and then Bronze Age, then of course I think I was wondering about the farm fair also, but alright, it's a gathering. You explained it shortly already, so maybe we don't dive into that, so we have time for the medieval time more. But now we're jumping forward. We had Aino, and now we had Kalevi, and now we are going forward to the Iron Age. That's 5000 BCE, so that's about 1500. Let's see if I read this the right way. Yeah, 5 Bronze Age, yeah, there 2000 to 1500 BCE, and now Iron Age is about 500 BCE, so 1500 years forward. So that's many generations after Aino and then Kalevi. But again, now comparing with the Bronze Age, give us a so-called street view from the point of view of again a new character. You said Helmi, so let's just choose Helmi because that's a name in current day and age Finland, and if it's an old name, I guess it has also been a name during the Iron Age. And yeah, now again, compare the crucial slash significant parts of the Iron Age to how they evolved and changed, and what kind of how they are different now in the Iron Age. So yeah, Helmi, from the point of view of Helmi, the street view and the differences, compared to the Bronze Age. We are somewhere close to Hamina and Kotka, I think, here, flying.
Let's explore a day in the life of Helmi during the
Neuvoton.
Iron Age, roughly around 500 BCE. This will highlight the significant changes from the Bronze Age. Morning, Helmi's home and environment. Helmi wakes up in a larger, more developed settlement compared to Kalevi's Bronze Age village. The
Maybe a
village is
city?
situated near
I'm
the
not
southern
sure.
shore of Finland, similar to Kalevi's location, but now featuring more advanced infrastructure. Her home is a larger, more robust structure with timber framing and thatched roofs, reflecting the increased sophistication of Iron Age construction. The walls are better insulated against the harsh winters, and the interior is more organized with distinct areas for living, cooking, and storage. Daily chores and work 1. Farming and livestock care. Helmi's primary focus is on her farm. Iron Age settlements have seen advancements in agriculture. Fields are now cultivated using iron plows, which are more efficient than their bronze counterparts. Helmi tends to her crops of barley, rye, and oats, which are grown in rotation to maintain soil fertility. She also raises livestock, including cattle, pigs, and sheep. Livestock pens are more secure and well-built, reflecting improved animal husbandry practices.
All right.
Metalworking. Iron Age communities are distinguished by the use of iron tools and weapons. Helmi's husband or another family member might be involved in metalworking, which is a significant advancement over Bronze Age tools.
Yeah. Ergo Iron
The
Age.
blacksmith's workshop is more established with a furnace for smelting iron ore and a forge for shaping tools. Tools are more varied and include improved plows, sickles, and other implements. Trade and craftsmanship. Helmi might need to trade surplus grains or crafted goods at a local market or fair. Trade networks have expanded, and settlements now engage in broader exchanges with neighboring regions. These fairs are vibrant with various goods such as pottery, textiles, and metal tools. Helmi's family might exchange crops or livestock for items they don't produce, like luxury goods or raw materials. Daily living and community. In the village, there are specialized roles and craftspeople, reflecting a more complex social structure. Helmi interacts with weavers, potters, and metalworkers. The community has a more developed social organization with clearer roles and possibly even early forms of leadership or councils. Differences from the Bronze Age. Agricultural advancements. The use of iron tools significantly improves agricultural efficiency. Fields are plowed more effectively and grain storage techniques have also advanced. Metalworking. The shift from bronze to iron represents a major technological leap. Iron tools and weapons are more durable and efficient, influencing various aspects of daily life, from farming to defense. Living conditions. Homes are more substantial and insulated, offering better
Yeah, you
protection
mentioned, yeah.
against the elements. The settlement layout is more organized, with designated areas for different activities. Trade and social structure. The expansion of trade networks and the rise of specialized craftspeople mark a shift towards a more complex economy and social structure. Marketplaces and fairs are central to the community's economic life. Helmi's Day reflects the advanced technology and organized society of the Iron Age, showcasing the evolution from the Bronze Age in terms of daily life, technology, and community organization.
Yeah, all right. So I guess the mutual thing here is that at least between Bronze Age and Iron Age is that um, the tools. I'm not sure if I mean everything is so to say better and more evolved, but necessary not necessary that much different. Maybe I mean maybe tribal. If we talk about early settlements a little, that was more tribal. Then Bronze Age is more like a communal village structure, maybe. And then Iron Age, is it wrong, AI Sky, to assume that we talk about large villages, maybe cities at this point? Or is that like past the point? Do I understand in the wrong way here?
You're on the right track, but let's clarify the progression. Early settlements. In the earlier periods, like the era of Aino, settlements were relatively small and tribal. People lived in
Yeah,
close knit communities with simple structures and relied heavily on subsistence farming and hunting. Bronze Age, by Clevy's time, communities were larger and more organized. Villages grew in size, and there was a shift towards more
villages.
complex social structures and trade networks.
So villages, yeah,
Settlements were still primarily village based,
yeah.
but with a higher degree of specialization and technology, like improved tools and metalworking. Iron Age. This is where things start to change significantly. In the Iron Age, settlements did grow larger and more complex. There was a trend towards the development of larger villages and early forms of towns. Iron Age societies saw more advanced infrastructure and more pronounced social and economic structures. Larger centers of
Mm.
trade and possibly proto cities began to appear, reflecting increased population and more developed societal organization. So, while the transition from the Bronze to Iron Age does involve significant advancements and changes in technology and social structure, the concept of cities as we understand them today wasn't quite present.
All
Instead, you
right,
see
yeah.
larger
Thank
and
you
more
for
complex settlements, which were the precursors to the urban centers that would develop in later periods.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying. I wondered, let's do it like this. Give us a detailed story, what, again, from Helmi's point of view, as she walks through a street, a market street, a busy market street here uh, on the southern shores of Finland. What merchants, traders, and other craftsmen, maybe even I'm not sure if priests, guards, knights, something like that. We are not maybe, or I'm not sure if we are at that point. But yeah, who who is watching at Aino? No, sorry, not Aino. I mean Helmi, as Helmi walks through this busy merchant street. What other so-called eye pairs are looking at her and the others? Yeah, a street view, a detailed street view from the point of view of Aino. What does he see? She, sorry, see? Ah, God damn it! What does she see, hear, smell, taste, and so on? Yeah, do that so that we get a good picture about this location and yeah, and generally what happens there. And it has to be historically accurate.
All right, let's immerse ourselves in Helmi's world during the Iron Age around 500 BCE as he strolls through a bustling market street on the southern shores of Finland. Helmi steps onto a vibrant street, the air alive with the sounds of daily trade and chatter. The market is set up near the water, where the terrain is flat and ideal for gathering people. The streets are lined with wooden stalls and thatched roof huts, with some structures built of timber and others with stone foundations. As she walks, the scent of freshly baked bread and roasted meat fills the air, mingling with the earthy aroma of herbs and spices. Merchants are busy with their trades, their stalls displaying a variety of goods. There's a blacksmith's booth with the sharp clang of hammer on anvil ringing out as the smith shapes iron tools and weapons. The blacksmith, wearing a leather apron, is busy forging a new set of tools while his apprentice assists. Next to the
Apprentice, yeah.
blacksmith, a potter is working at her wheel, shaping clay into pots and bowls. Her stall is adorned with various finished pieces, their smooth surfaces glistening in the sunlight. Nearby, a weaver is showing off beautifully woven cloths, their colors vibrant and patterns intricate. The weaver's loom, a simple but effective tool, is busy creating fabric. In another corner, a trader is selling grains and dried fish. The trader's stall is stacked with sacks of barley, rye, and dried fish, each carefully arranged. The grains are stored
Yeah.
in wooden barrels, and the fish are strung up on ropes.
No! Why? Connection fail. Let's see if the AI remembers. Yeah, you got lost there. The connection failed, but can you continue on from? You said they were a weaver and then a barley and such on the busy merchant street that Helmi walks through. Can you remember where you got cut off, AI Sky?
Certainly. Picking up where we left off, Helmi is walking through the busy merchant street, passing the weaver's stall where beautifully woven cloths are displayed. The weaver's loom is in action, and the vibrant colors and intricate patterns of the fabric catch her eye. Nearby, there's a trader specializing in grains and dried fish. The grains are stored in large wooden barrels, while the dried fish hangs from ropes, their strong smell mixing with the other market aromas. The trader and his assistants are busy weighing and packaging the goods. Helmi also sees cattle traders who have brought their livestock to the market. The cattle,
Maybe
well
horses?
fed and sturdy, are being examined by potential buyers. The air is filled with the sounds of haggling and discussion about the animal's qualities and health. Guards in simple armor and with spears patrol the market to keep things orderly. Though not knights, they play a crucial role in ensuring the safety of the vendors and visitors.
All right.
In addition, Helmi notices a small shrine or sacred space where a priest or shaman might be performing a ritual. Offerings like bread and meat are placed at the base, and the priest, dressed in ceremonial robes, is engaged in a quiet ceremony. The market is lively and full of activity. Helmi tastes some freshly baked bread from a vendor and sips mead, enjoying the vibrant, bustling atmosphere of the Iron Age marketplace.
Mead. Yeah, all right. Thank you. I think that clarified well kind of the street view for from Helmi's point of view at an busy Iron Age market street. Now, AI Sky, let's really focus on the medieval period. So again, now you have to come up with a name because Helmi and then going back Kalevi and Aino and before that Taival has been used. So this could be a Swedish influenced name. Maybe I want it to be historically accurate, but yeah, give us kind of first the medieval period in a nutshell. Don't go into the different main topics, but give us kind of a chronological overview of what we should take into consideration and talk about when we talk about medieval period Finland on the southern shores here. I am soon over Porvoo or Borgo in Swedish, and I actually have visited the place, and it's a beautiful place. I urge others to visit it also. It has still now not maybe the medieval, but it has this old town with three buildings. Still, it protects and maintains the old town there. So yeah, but yeah, could you do that? Give us the main points without going into those regarding the medieval period in Porvoo and in general southeastern Finland.
Certainly.
Sky.
The
Sky.
medieval
Oh,
period in southern Finland, including areas like Porvoo, spans roughly from the late 12th century to the late 16th century. Here's a broad overview. 1. Early medieval period, late 12th to 13th century. This era marks the beginning of Swedish influence over Finland. The establishment of Christianity began with the arrival of missionaries. The first churches were built, and local governance started to take shape with the introduction of feudal structures. 2. High medieval period, 14th century. This time saw the consolidation of Swedish rule. Finland was increasingly integrated into the Swedish realm. Towns like Porvoo began to grow and trade expanded. Local nobility became more influential, and the medieval societal structure became more defined. 3. Late medieval period, 15th to 16th century. This period was marked by internal conflicts, including peasant uprisings and power struggles among the nobility. The influence of the Hanseatic League brought economic prosperity, but also internal competition. The Reformation began to spread towards the end of this period, shifting Finland's religious landscape from Catholicism to Lutheranism. 4. Key aspects. Throughout the medieval period, the construction of fortifications and churches was prominent. Trade routes developed, especially in coastal towns. Feudal estates and manorial systems were established, and there was a gradual shift towards more centralized administrative control under Swedish rule. As you fly over Porvoo, it's fascinating to consider how these early influences shaped the area into what it is today, with its rich history still visible in the preserved old town.
Okay, so let's dive into those then. Again, give me a historically accurate name, man or woman, that has a semi-important role in the society, so to say, in the hierarchy. And let's see what kind of life in a day or day in life. What's the right saying? Yeah, we yeah. One life in day. No, day in life, I think. Yeah, whatever. Sorry. We can then explore. But yeah, the name first. Don't go into details yet.
For a historically accurate name from the medieval period in Finland, you could use Erik. This name was common
Erik,
during that
yeah.
time and fits well for someone with a semi-important role in society, such as a local noble or a prominent tradesman.
Okay, so Erik or yeah, Erik. How do you want to pronounce it? Let's start with the early. I'm not sure. He must live in the early medieval period, late 12th to 13th century. So this era marks, you said, the beginning of Swedish influence over Finland. The establishment of Christianity began with the arrival of missionaries. The first churches were built, and local governance started to take shape with the introduction of feudal structures. I'm not sure what feudal structures mean. Maybe you can explain that, Sky. But yeah, Erik is living in this era, and he has to do with these mentioned early medieval period main topics strongly. So come up with a craft for him also that relates to those.
In the early medieval period of Finland, during the late 12th to 13th centuries, feudal structures were just beginning to take shape. This means that society was
Hmm?
transitioning from tribal and local forms of governance to a more hierarchical system where
More
land
general?
ownership and local authority were closely tied to the ruling class and the church. Feudal structures included lords and vassals, where landowners, lords, granted land to others, vassals, in exchange for military service or other obligations.
Oh, alright,
The
alright.
church also played a significant role, with local governance often influenced by religious leaders. For Eric, a fitting craft might be a local blacksmith. Blacksmiths were crucial during this period, as they were
Hmm?
responsible for forging tools, weapons, and other metal items essential for daily life and defense. Eric would be involved
Yeah, let's
in
see.
producing iron tools and weapons, which were vital as Finland began to see more Swedish influence and Christian missionaries. So, to sum up, Eric is a blacksmith living in early medieval
No, no, no,
Finland.
no. I disagree. Let's see. Yeah, otherwise, all right, but not the blacksmith. We have had our fair share of blacksmiths in the episode up until now. So I want him to be a important character regarding the establishment of Christianity. So maybe he is a missionary. Is that maybe a good option? And then from his point of view, again, I want you to explain from the moment he wakes up and starts his day in high detail and in a historically accurate way. Explain, yeah, as I said, from his point of view, a day in life of Eric, a missionary in the early medieval period here in southern Finland near Porvoo or Borgo.
Absolutely. Eric, as a missionary, is a great choice for this period. Here's a detailed look at his day. Morning. Eric wakes before dawn in a modest wooden dwelling, likely a small house near a newly established church in the area. His
Mm.
morning routine is simple but essential. He lights a small fire in the hearth to warm the room and prepare a basic breakfast, perhaps some porridge made from barley or oats. As he eats, he reviews his notes and prayers in Latin, the language of the church at the time. Travel to the
All
community.
right.
After breakfast, Eric dons his simple woolen robes, which mark him as a missionary. He carries a wooden staff, a symbol of his role, and a practical tool for walking. He sets out on foot or horseback, making his way through the rugged, forested terrain that characterizes southern Finland. The journey might be through muddy
Horseback.
paths or along small rivers. Daily tasks. Upon reaching the village, Eric's day is filled with a variety of tasks. He might begin by meeting with local leaders to discuss the establishment of the new church and how Christianity will be integrated
Leader
into
meaning
their
what?
lives. His conversations with the locals are a mix of preaching and diplomacy, aiming to persuade them of the benefits of Christianity and the new order it brings. Eric then conducts a church service, which includes preaching from the Bible and performing simple ceremonies. The church itself is likely a modest wooden structure, newly built with help from local laborers and possibly Scandinavian settlers. Teaching and community engagement. Throughout the day, Eric also engages with villagers, teaching them about Christian doctrines and the new ways of life. He might visit households to offer prayers and blessings, help with agricultural tasks, or provide counsel. His role is not only to preach, but to become part of the community, helping to integrate Christian practices into their daily routines.
Yeah, all right.
Evening. As evening approaches, Eric returns to his dwelling. He prepares a simple meal, often consisting of bread and preserved fish or meat. He spends time in personal reflection and prayer, perhaps writing letters or maintaining records of his missionary work. Before bed, he might review his plans for the next day, which could include more visits to nearby settlements, further teaching, and coordinating with other missionaries. He then retires early to rest, preparing for another day of spreading Christianity in the region. Summary. Eric's day as a missionary is a blend of spiritual duties and practical tasks, all aimed at establishing Christianity in the region. His role involves interacting with the local population, integrating new religious practices into their lives, and helping build a new societal structure in early medieval Finland.
Okay, quite all right. I'm wondering. You said horseback, so we have horses at this point. I'm not sure if we had them earlier. But then regarding the missionary work, Erik was talking with leaders. What are some leaders back then? Do we talk about like priests, or what's the hierarchy in the church back in the early medieval period? Where Eric now lives. And yeah, um, do that first. Let's see what we come up with then.
In the early medieval period in Finland, particularly in the late 12th to 13th centuries, the hierarchy and leadership structures were evolving as Christianity was introduced. Here's a breakdown of the key figures and structures Eric might interact with. 1. Local chieftains or elders. Before Christianity took hold, the local leaders were often chieftains or village elders. They held authority within their communities and were crucial in decision making. Eric would need to gain their support to effectively introduce Christian practices. Two, missionaries and priests. As Christianity began to spread, missionaries like Eric played a vital role. These individuals were often sent by religious institutions or orders from other regions like Sweden and had a missionary mandate to convert and educate local populations. Early Christian priests were starting to establish themselves in the region, and Eric's role would have involved coordinating with them. Three, bishops. Bishops were higher ranking church officials responsible for overseeing multiple parishes or regions. In the context of Finland, bishops from neighboring regions like Sweden would have been involved in establishing the church structure.
Yeah.
Eric might have had correspondence or directives from a bishop, but might not have interacted with them daily. For church hierarchy, the early church hierarchy was somewhat less formalized compared to later periods. The primary roles were still being established, and church leaders were often involved in both religious and administrative duties. Eric's work would involve liaising with these figures to set up local churches and ensure that Christian practices were followed. Five, secular leaders. Local secular leaders would also
Mm-hmm.
be important for Eric's mission. These could include members of the nobility or influential figures in the area who held political power. Gaining their approval was crucial for the successful integration of Christianity into the community. In summary, Eric's interactions would primarily be with local chieftains and elders, fellow missionaries and priests, and possibly bishops from nearby regions. The church's hierarchy was still developing, and Eric's role was critical in laying the groundwork for future religious and social structures.
Yeah, right. So local local chieftains or elders, missionaries and priests, bishops, church, yeah, church hierarchy in general, secular leaders. Yeah, all right. Thank you for that. All right. Do Eric here do any practical kind of work? Let's say the main thing he does is share the knowledge of the Christian church's existence and the belief. Uh, I want to end this segment about the early medieval period by giving the viewers and our listeners a depictive picture about again from the point of view of Eric here as a missionary, what I mean up to even the language he used, may in English of course. I assume he used Swedish or Finnish maybe back then, but what sentences did he say? Historically accurate sentences uh, in his day when he shares, so to say, the Lord's word, if that's a fair way to say it. He stands somewhere, or does he walk around? Let's say in Porvoo here. We're soon there at Porvoo, I think. Or what's the thing? Where is he? What does he say exactly? Or as exactly you can explain AI Sky, and yeah, do that from the point of view of Eric. He meets, I assume, other individuals that lives in the area in Porvoo, and yeah, a detailed explanation of Eric midst work, so to say.
Sure, let's dive into a day in the life of Eric, the missionary, in the early medieval period near Porvoo. Eric is dedicated to spreading Christianity, so his day is focused on outreach, persuasion, and
Yeah,
establishing a
in
foothold for the new
practice.
faith. Morning. Eric wakes up early in a modest dwelling, perhaps an early Christian chapel or a simple home provided by a local benefactor. He prepares for the day by donning a simple yet dignified robe, carrying symbols of the Christian faith like a wooden cross or a small Bible. His tools include religious texts and possibly some basic items for writing or making notes. Mid morning, he begins his day by visiting a local chieftain or village elder. This leader is a key figure who holds influence over the community. Eric might approach the chieftain with a respectful greeting in Old Norse or Latin, depending on the level of interaction and understanding. An example greeting might be, "Good day, noble chieftain. I bring a message of peace and salvation from the one true God, whom we call the Lord. I seek your wisdom and your ear for a message of hope and unity." Eric engages in a respectful dialogue, discussing the principles of Christianity and how they could benefit the community. He emphasizes concepts like charity, the promise of eternal life, and the moral teachings of Jesus Christ. He might use local
Yeah,
languages or dialects influenced by Old Norse and Early Finnish to ensure understanding. The Lord offers love and redemption
interesting.
to all who believe. He teaches us to love our neighbors as ourselves and to seek forgiveness and peace. Early afternoon, Eric then moves through the bustling market street of Porvoo, engaging with townspeople. The market is lively, with traders selling goods like grain, wool, and crafts. Eric's presence is noticeable, and he interacts with merchants and local residents, speaking to them about the faith. He might offer small blessings or prayers for health and prosperity. May the blessings of the Lord be upon your work today. In his name I pray for your success and well-being. He uses approachable language, aiming to be persuasive without being overbearing. Eric may also distribute pamphlets or simple religious tracts if they are available, explaining Christian teachings and inviting people to the local chapel. Mid-afternoon, in the afternoon, Eric meets with fellow missionaries or priests. They discuss strategies for furthering their mission, sharing stories of successful conversions, and planning new outreach activities. These meetings are conducted in a more formal tone, perhaps using Latin or a formal Old Norse dialect. Our mission grows with each passing day. Let us strengthen our resolve and continue to spread the message of salvation with compassion and dedication. Evening. As the day concludes, Eric attends a small gathering or service at a local chapel where he leads a prayer or delivers a sermon. He speaks to the gathered community about faith, salvation, and the teachings of Christ. The sermon is delivered with warmth and conviction, aiming to reinforce the message of Christianity. Brothers and sisters, remember that the Lord's love is boundless and his grace is a gift to all. Embrace his teachings and let his light guide your hearts. Late evening. Eric finishes his day by reflecting on the events and planning for the next day's activities. He writes in his journal or updates his records about the progress of his mission, the responses he encountered, and the strategies for continued outreach. Throughout the day, Eric's approach is patient and respectful as he navigates the diverse cultural landscape and works to integrate Christian beliefs into the local context of Porvoo. His language and interactions are designed to build trust and foster a positive reception of Christianity in this early medieval setting.
Yeah, thank you. To end kind of this early medieval period now, regarding Eric, could you maybe give us some a dialogue between Eric and a individual that lives here in Porvoo, um, that is true to history, so to say, historically accurate, as I mentioned or remind you many times. Yeah, a dialogue. Eric tries to get the so-called missionary work and communicate for the word of Lord, the Lord, so to say, but the counterpart there is unsure and does not care that much. And let's do it so that you maybe start with English. Do not do a super long dialogue, but start with English a couple of times back and forth, and then translate it to Swedish or you said Old Norse, maybe a historically accurate language. Can you do that, Sky? Are you able to talk in the way that the individuals talked back in the early medieval period around the area or in the area of modern day Porvoo in Finland? Let's challenge the AI slightly, see if we can.
Certainly. Let's create a historically grounded dialogue between Eric, the missionary, and a local
Interesting.
resident in Porvoo during the early medieval period.
Really interesting.
Good day, friend. I bring you a message of hope and salvation from the one true God. Have you heard of his teachings? Greetings. I've heard some talk, but our old ways are strong. Why should I listen to this new message? The teachings of the Lord offer peace and eternal life. They guide us to love one another and seek forgiveness. This can bring great harmony to your life. Our traditions have served us well. How can these new teachings change that? By embracing these teachings, you may find a deeper sense of purpose and community. It is not to replace your ways, but to enrich them with new understanding. I will consider your words. Change comes slowly in these parts. In Old Norse, adapted for historical context, Erik, godan dag, vinner. Jeg flyter både von og frelsen fra einum sanna gudi. Jeg har hørt om hans kenningar. Heila sel. Jeg har hørt som tal, en okkar gamle sider er sterker. Kvi og jeg hlusta av þessa nýju boðskap. Kenningar drottins bjóða fríð og eilíft líf. Mítfrag. Það leiði oss til þess að elska hver annan og leita fyrirlætis. En þetta getur veit mikla samhljóm í þínu lífi. Okkar hefur hafa þjónað okkur vel. Hvernig geta þessar nýju kenningar breytt því? Með því að taka við þessum kenningum mun þú kannski finna dýrmætari tilgang og samfélag. Já, það er ekki til að skipta út þínum síðum, heldur til að auka þá með nýju skilningi. Mér verður að auka þín orð. Let's. Breytingar koma hægt hér í þessum hérðum. This dialogue captures the respectful and persuasive nature of Erik's missionary work, addressing the skepticism and slow acceptance typical of the time.
Well, thank you. I did not understand it, but I understood some words, I think. I have mentioned it before that I am fluent in Swedish. But yeah, so some words were distinguishable, if that's the right phrase. Now, going forward, high medieval period, 14th century. The difference here, you say that the time saw the consolidation of Swedish rule. Finland was increasingly integrated into the Swedish realm. Towns like Porvoo began to grow. We are now above Porvoo, I believe. I had struggled to find it. And trade expanded. Local nobility became more influential. Local nobility became more influential. So maybe our next character is a local nobility, AI Sky. And the medieval society structure became more defined. So yeah, a new name, a historically accurate name. I'm not sure regarding nobility in the high medieval period here around the area, in the area and around the area of Porvoo. Was it a man or a woman? I do not know, but kind of, yeah. The society back then, I think, were even more masculine in that way. So I guess, but don't quote me on that it maybe is a man. But yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, AI Sky, and give us a new name again. In the high medieval period, in the southern shores of Finland, near Porvoo.
Certainly. In the high medieval period, specifically around the 14th century, Finland saw significant changes with the consolidation of Swedish rule and the growth of towns like Porvoo. The local nobility began to gain more influence, and the societal structure became more defined. A historically accurate name for a member of the local nobility in this period could be Håkan, which was a common name among Scandinavian nobility. Håkan could be a nobleman who plays a role in the growing importance of Porvoo and the increasing influence of local nobility. He might be involved in local governance, overseeing trade, or managing land. Regarding gender roles, while it's true that medieval societies were predominantly masculine in terms of leadership roles, there were notable women of influence as well. However, for the context of a nobleman in the high medieval period, Håkan is a fitting choice. Let me know if you want to dive into Håkan's daily life or other aspects of this period.
Yeah, of course. A side note, a question here before we continue on with the high medieval period. Where do we fit the Vikings? They are kind of. I'm planning on doing a separate episode regarding those, but let's dive slightly into that also. I remember that Vikings. I mean, they have been in Finland quite significantly, I think. Again, correct me if I'm wrong here, Sky, but I'm thinking of the 12th century, so the early medieval period. But yeah, could you give us a overview over how Vikings affected southern shores of Finland, and in what era, before we go forth with the high medieval period?
Absolutely. The Vikings had a notable impact on the southern shores of Finland, but their influence is primarily seen during the late 8th to early 11th centuries, which aligns with the Viking Age rather than the
So
early medieval period you're
before
referring
the
to.
medieval then.
During the Viking Age, which spanned from around 750 to 1050 CE, Finnish territories were
No,
indeed
later.
influenced by Viking activity. The Vikings, primarily from Sweden, Denmark, and Norway, were active in exploring, trading, and raiding various parts of Europe, including the eastern Baltic region. In southern Finland, the Vikings established trade routes that connected the area to their broader network. They were involved in both trade and raiding along the coast. Finnish settlements, particularly those near the coast and along major rivers, interacted with the Vikings through trade and sometimes conflict. The Viking influence in Finland was marked by the establishment of trading centers and the movement of goods. The Finnish people were introduced to new technologies, goods, and cultural influences from the Vikings, contributing to the evolution of local societies. The Vikings themselves were often engaged in trading rather than just raiding in these regions. So the Vikings' presence in Finland was a part of their broader expansion across Northern Europe and had a lasting impact on the region, contributing to its historical development before the consolidation of Swedish rule and the more structured medieval period.
Yeah, yeah, all right. So just to clarify, are the Vikings, where can we fit them in this kind of bronze iron age and medieval period? So I heard what you said, but I'm unsure if I understood it correctly. So if the early medieval age began from the 12th century, so is that the 1300s or is that the 12th or 1100s? I'm always confused with a century when you talk about 12th or 14th or a 7th century or something like that. So and then comparing the medieval times, is it in the same vicinity era-wise with the Vikings, or were they before or after the medieval era?
Sure, let's clarify that. The Viking Age occurred from approximately the late 8th century to the early 11th century.
So
So that's
before.
roughly from 750 to 1050 CE.
All right,
This
all right.
period is before the High Medieval period. When we talk about centuries like the 12th or 14th, we're referring to the 1100s and 1300s, respectively. The early medieval period, which includes the Vikings, spans roughly from the 5th to the 11th century. So the Vikings were active before the High Medieval period. The High Medieval period starts in the 12th century, which is from 1200 to 1399 CE. This period follows the Viking Age and includes the consolidation of Swedish rule in Finland and the development of more defined medieval societies.
Yeah, all right.
In summary, the Viking Age is before the early medieval period, and both precede the High Medieval period.
Yeah, all right. So kind of is Bronze Age is 500 BCE before current era. So then we have 500 years, and that's the year of Jesus Christ, so to say. And then 500 years after that, so 500 current time CE fourth to medieval period
Exactly,
roughly.
you've got it. The
Yeah.
Bronze Age ends around 500 BCE. Moving forward 500 years from that, we hit the start of the Common Era, around the time of Jesus Christ's birth. Then another 500 years from
That's
that
the
would bring us to
Vikings.
around 500 CE, marking the start of the early medieval period.
Yeah, all right, all right.
So you're right in placing the Bronze Age and early medieval periods with these 500-year increments.
Yeah, Iron Age. But yeah, so the Vikings are between the Iron Age and medieval period. I'm not going to dive too much into that. I was hoping kind of that we could have this dialogue between a Viking and a medieval period character, but that's not historically accurate. So let's leave that. Uh, I mean, the Vikings were here. I'm not sure. You mentioned it, but really shortly, Sky, was the influence really big in southern Finland? regarding Vikings between Iron Age and medieval period, or I mean there's some influence, but how would you put it? Is it a little, medium, or a lot? Have to do a separate episode on the Vikings, of course.
The Viking influence in southern Finland was notable, but not as significant as in other regions like Scandinavia.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
were Viking raids and trading interactions, so the influence would be considered medium.
Yeah,
Vikings
alright.
did leave some impact through trade routes and settlements, but it wasn't as extensive or lasting as in more central areas of Scandinavia.
Alright, alright. Let's continue on. So high medieval period in Porvoo, southern Finland, and you said local nobility became more influential, as I said before. So the character named Håkan now is a noble man. What is his specific trade? And he again wakes up and does his trade. A day in the life, a descriptive and depictive day in the life of Håkan. Who does he meet? What does he say? What does he hear, see, smell, and such things as he goes on with his craft this day that we are kind of explaining to me and the audience. Gonna go lower down, descend
For Håkon, the
towards
nobleman
Porvoo.
in the high medieval period in Porvoo, his specific trade could be managing land and overseeing agricultural production, which was common for local nobility.
Okay.
Here's a detailed look into a
Landlord,
day in his life.
maybe?
Morning. Håkon awakens early in his stone manor house. The sun's first light filters through the narrow windows, casting soft beams onto the wooden floor. He can hear the distant crowing of roosters and the rustling of animals in the stable. The smell of fresh bread baking in the kitchen mingles with the earthy scent of the surrounding farmland. Breakfast. He enjoys a simple breakfast of bread, cheese, and ale. As he eats, he discusses the day's
Ale.
agenda with his steward, who brings news from the nearby villages. They talk about the status of various farms, the weather, and any issues that need addressing. Håkon rides his horse to the fields. The crisp morning air is filled with the smell of dew on the grass and the sound of the laborers working the land. He inspects the crops, noting the progress and talking with the farmers about their needs. He might give instructions on improving irrigation or discuss plans for next year's planting. At noon, he returns to his manor for a meal with his family. The dining hall is bustling with servants and the aroma of roast meat and stewed vegetables. Håkon discusses local politics and upcoming events with his wife and children. They talk about the upcoming visit of a high-ranking church official. Afternoon.
Church again, yeah.
In the afternoon, Håkon meets with local craftsmen and traders. They discuss trade agreements and the supply of goods like wool, timber, and iron. He also might address disputes or provide justice in his role as a local lord, hearing grievances and settling minor legal issues. Late afternoon, he rides out again, this time to visit neighboring estates or attend to matters of local governance. The sounds of nature accompany him, with the scent of forest and the distant chatter of villagers. Evening, returning home, Håkon enjoys a quiet evening with his family. The manor is lit by torches and candles, creating a warm, flickering glow. The smells of dinner linger, and he might read or review reports from his steward. Night. Before bed, he takes a moment to reflect on the day. The night is quiet, with only the sounds of the countryside and the occasional hoot of an owl. He prepares for the next day's duties, ensuring everything is in order. This depiction provides a glimpse into Håkon's daily life, highlighting his role in managing land, interacting with various people, and maintaining his noble duties.
Okay, let's dive a little deeper still. So he's a landlord, essentially. Does he oversee his own land or land of many others also?
As a local nobleman, Håkon primarily oversees his own land.
Alright, alright.
However, his
Oh,
role
you're
often
talking still.
involves managing and supervising land may belong to other tenants or smaller landholders within his domain.
Yeah,
This could
alright.
include 1. Direct management. He directly oversees his own estate, ensuring that agriculture and other activities are running smoothly. This includes managing resources, production, and the well-being of his serfs or peasants. 2. Feudal responsibilities. As part of the feudal system, he might also have authority over land granted to lesser nobles or tenants.
Hmm.
He ensures that they fulfill their obligations to him, such as paying rent or providing military service. 3. Local governance. Håkon may be involved in resolving disputes and enforcing local laws among his tenants and other landholders within his jurisdiction. In essence, while his primary focus is on his own estate, his influence and responsibilities extend to overseeing the broader lands and people within his feudal domain.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. So it sounds like at this point of high medieval period, in this particular example at least, sorry, these scattered crafts find or kind of evolved so that they are under a mutual landlord. So you have your maybe blacksmiths and traders separately or something like that, but then when you talk about growing crops and cattle and owning land, you can include a lot of different crafts in this area, and hence you have then a landlord that oversees it directly or indirectly with this hierarchical structure. Difficult word, but yeah, is that fair to assume, Sky?
Yes, that's a fair assumption. In the high medieval period, the feudal system organized various aspects of life and work into a hierarchical structure. Local nobility like Håkon would oversee large estates, which included various crafts and agricultural activities. Each estate would have its own specialized craftsmen, like blacksmiths and millers, who worked directly or indirectly for the nobleman. The nobleman managed the land and its resources, ensured productivity, and handled relations with his tenants and vassals. This structure allowed for more efficient management and coordination of the different activities necessary for the estate's functioning.
Yeah, all right. I think that's kind of enough now for that part. As we then go forth to the late medieval period, that is the 15th to 16th century, according to you. So again, we have to come up with a new character that is kind of is related to Taival and Aino, and what else? We had Kalevi and Helmi. Then we had Erik and Håkan. So now a new name again that is historically accurate and lives in the late medieval period here in Porvoo again. And this period, you said, was marked by internal conflicts, including peasant uprising and power struggles. Yeah. So yeah, answer me first, and I'm gonna go into the
For the
details.
late medieval
Then
period in Porvoo, a historically accurate name could be Mats.
Mats.
During this
All right.
time, Finland experienced internal conflicts, including peasant uprisings and struggles between local leaders. Mats would fit into this era as a figure involved in these dynamics. In this period, the power struggles were intensified by conflicts between local nobility and the rising influence of cities and towns. Mats might be involved
Cities
in
and
either the
towns.
conflicts or the efforts to manage or mediate these disputes.
All right. So what was Mats' craft back then? Yeah, I'm gonna read through this so I remember and the audience gets a refresh. This period was marked by internal conflicts, including peasant uprisings and power struggles among nobility. The influence of the Hanseatic League, that sounds familiar, remotely familiar, brought economic prosperity but also internal competition. The Reformation began to spread towards the end of this period, shifting Finland's religious landscape from Catholicism to Lutheranism. Yeah, so the Catholic Church and the Lutheran Church, if I pronounce that right. So I want the craft of Mats to be strongly relating to what I just said. Um, what do you think, Sky? What's suitable here?
For Mats in the late medieval period, considering the internal conflicts, economic shifts, and the Reformation, a suitable craft for him could be a merchant. As a merchant, Mats would be deeply involved in the economic prosperity brought by the Hanseatic League, dealing with trade, and navigating the resulting internal competition. Additionally, He might witness and be affected by the changes brought by the Reformation, especially as it altered religious and social dynamics. His daily life would involve not only managing trade, but also dealing with the political and religious shifts of the time.
Okay, okay, yeah, we have had kind of a worker here in an example. Now we had a landlord. Um, Before we continue, I'm not sure if maybe a trader, what kind of trader? Let's see what we come up with. But explain the late medieval period in the subtopics, a list of subtopics to us, and then the Hanseatic League. Is that, I'm not sure, but is that the kind of agreement between Denmark and Sweden and Norway? I'm not sure if Iceland was a part of it, but I remember something about the Danish king or queen. I'm not actually sure. And then the let's say the grand Scandinavian country. I'm not sure of the name back then. Was separated to different parts or something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sky, but yeah, explain this late medieval period subtopics in a chronological order to us, so that we have a rough script/guide to go forth on as we explore further the late medieval period in southern Finland. Traffic? Where? Oh no, there's an airplane somewhere. I see it on the VFR map.
Sure, let's break down the late medieval period and the Hanseatic League to give you a clear overview. The late medieval period in Scandinavia, and specifically in southern Finland, is generally from the 15th to the 16th century.
Yeah, that you mentioned, yeah.
Here's a simplified chronological breakdown. 1. Internal conflicts and peasant uprisings, 15th century. During this time, there were numerous internal conflicts in Finland and the wider Scandinavian region. Peasant uprisings occurred due to economic hardships and social unrest. 2. Rise of the Hanseatic League, 15th century. The Hanseatic League, a powerful network of trading cities and guilds, expanded its influence. It controlled trade routes across the Baltic Sea and brought significant economic prosperity, but also increased competition and internal strife. 3. Power struggles among nobility, late 15th century. The growing economic power of the Hanseatic League contributed to power struggles among the nobility, who vied for control and influence. 4. The Reformation begins, late 15th to early 16th century. The spread of the Reformation, a religious movement that challenged the Catholic Church and promoted Lutheranism, began to change Finland's religious landscape. This transition affected many aspects of daily life and governance. 5. Political changes and alliances, early 16th century. The late medieval period saw shifting political alliances and the consolidation of power within Scandinavia, eventually leading to more centralized states. Regarding the Hanseatic League, it was indeed a powerful trading alliance, but it wasn't a formal agreement between Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. Instead, it was a network of merchant guilds and towns across northern Europe. It began in the 12th century and reached its height in the 14th and 15th centuries. Its influence extended across the Baltic and North Seas, including parts of what is now Germany, the Baltic states, Poland, and Scandinavia. The Scandinavian countries you mentioned were historically connected but politically divided. Denmark,
Yeah,
Sweden,
alright.
and Norway were separate kingdoms, but they often interacted and formed alliances. Iceland was indeed part of the Norwegian kingdom during the late medieval period. So for Mats, a trader in this era, his role might involve managing trade routes, dealing with the economic impacts of the Hanseatic League, and adapting to the shifting religious and political landscape brought about by the Reformation.
Okay, so let's again dive a little deeper into those. I'm not sure how, because there's a we talk about 1 or 200 years here, but to have the best example, I think the Hanseatic League and the Reformation power struggles. What do you think, Sky? If we kind of tweak, Mats can be Mats, the name can be Mats, but what do you think is more suitable here as you think about what we have covered already? I want it to be really strongly relating to the main topics here, or the 5 subtopics. So I'm thinking Reformation is again has to do with the church, and we have the missionary example before. So let's not maybe dive into that. Power struggles in cooperation with oh
Focusing on the Hanseatic League and the power struggles might be the best approach for Mats. Given that the Hanseatic League was central to
yeah
trade and economic changes during the late medieval period, a character involved in this aspect would fit well with the themes you're exploring. For Mats, we could make him a merchant deeply engaged in trade, influenced by the Hanseatic League.
yeah, but I want the
This would
second
make him
character
directly
also.
relevant to the economic prosperity and competition of the time. His activities could involve 1. Navigating trade routes. Mats might handle the logistics of shipping goods, dealing with both local and international merchants, and responding to the
Mm?
economic pressures of the Hanseatic League's influence. 2. Economic impact of the Hanseatic League. As a trader, Mats would be affected by the prosperity and competition that came with the Hanseatic League's dominance. He might face challenges from competing traders and shifts
Yeah,
in market demands.
yeah.
3. Dealing with power struggles. The internal power struggles among the nobility could impact Mats's business. He might have to navigate changing alliances or deal with disputes that affect trade. 4. Local influence. Mats's interactions with local nobility and peasants could reflect the broader social tensions and economic changes of the period. By focusing on Mats as a trader, you can explore how the Hanseatic League's economic influence and the local power struggles shaped daily life and business in late medieval Porvo.
Yeah, let's do so. We have Mats and we have two other characters. One is a nobleman or landlord or something like that, and then we have a foreigner tradesperson, uh, and maybe even a reformation. Or regarding the reformation, we have two characters that are kind of fighting each other, or if that's the right phrase, regarding the Catholic and Lutheran churches. So, what other names do you suggest? And then let's end kind of this podcast soon on this multifaceted example that hopefully kind of gives me, you, and the audience a true to life, historically accurate day or week where a lot happens, and it has to do with kind of the main points here that we discuss regarding the late medieval period in Porvo as I crashed into Porvo's archipelago. Great job, Ode.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now.
No, of course you
Our
have.
systems are experiencing heavy load. Please try again later.
Yeah, are you there, Sky? Please do not stop working right now. I need you. I need you, man.
I'm here and I'm ready to help.
Yeah. So I said that let's come up with.
Let's dive into
Oh,
Mats's role as a trader in the late medieval period.
no. You did not hear me. So we have Mats that is a trader. Then I want to include a separate name that is a landlord, a third name that is a foreign trader that benefited from the Hanseatic League, and then I want two separate individuals on top of those that are a part of the Reformation. They are 100 years apart, but just to have this example explained without it taking too long, I want one Catholic church member and a Lutheran church member, and I want you in a chronological and historically accurate order to create an day in the life example again of these different characters. So you said one, internal conflicts between peasants and nobility, and then rise of the Hanseatic League because of that. Then power struggles among nobility because I guess the economic power of the Hanseatic League contributed to power struggles among the nobility who viewed for control and influence. The fourth one was the Reformation begins, and then the fifth one was general political changes because of that. So could you do your utmost in constructing a true to life and historically accurate and chronological day in the life uh, kind of story of the family tree of Håkan Fort now to Mats and the other names I want you to give me. Let's see if the AI is up for it. Up for this.
Absolutely. I'll outline the day in the life stories for the characters across the late medieval period in chronological order. Here's a detailed, historically accurate depiction of their lives. 1. Håkon Fort's grandson, landlord late 15th century, character named Magnus Fort, craft, landowner overseeing multiple estates. A day in the life. Magnus Fort wakes up early in his manor, situated near Porvo. His day begins with a hearty breakfast of rye bread and porridge. He inspects his land, checking the condition of crops and cattle,
Mm.
and meets with his estate managers to discuss the management of tenants and agricultural output. He holds a meeting with local peasants to ensure that rents and services are provided.
Okay, let's see if I can do that better. Yeah, those names you came up with and the crafts they have, could they meet in the story so that it communicates the era and the day of their life in a clear way for our audience?
Certainly. Here's how these characters could interact in a day that illustrates the late medieval period. Morning, Magnus Fort, the landlord, starts his day with a visit to his estate. He inspects the crops and livestock, making sure everything is running smoothly. As he checks on his land, he encounters Mats Johansson, the local trader. Mats is busy negotiating a shipment of grain from Magnus's estate to the Hanseatic League's trading hub.
Magnus and Mats, yeah?
They discuss the terms of the trade, and Magnus emphasizes the importance of timely deliveries to maintain their relationship. Late morning, Hans von Lübeck, a foreign trader from the Hanseatic League, arrives in Porvo's bustling port. He meets Mats to finalize their trade agreements. They discuss the logistics of transporting goods between Lübeck and Porvo, ensuring that their business is in line with the Hanseatic League's regulations.
Yeah.
Magnus might also drop by to check on the progress and discuss any issues with the shipment or trade terms. Afternoon, Father Carlson, a local Catholic priest, spends time in his parish church preparing for his sermons and meeting with parishioners. He occasionally crosses paths with Mats, who is a regular at the church. They discuss the recent changes in the town and the challenges posed by the shifting power dynamics. Late afternoon, Pastor Anderson, a Lutheran pastor, arrives in Porvo and starts his outreach work, meeting with the local community to discuss the new Protestant teachings. His visit creates some tension among the townsfolk who are still loyal to the Catholic faith. He might have a conversation with Father Carlson addressing the theological differences and the impacts of the Reformation.
Yeah.
Evening. The day concludes with Magnus hosting a gathering at his manor. Mats Johansson, Hans von Lübeck, Father Carlson, and Pastor Anderson attend. The evening is filled with discussions about trade, religious changes, and the power struggles among the nobility. Magnus uses this opportunity to strategize with Mats and Hans on how to secure better trade routes and deals. Meanwhile, Father Carlson and Pastor Anderson engage in a respectful yet passionate debate about the Reformation's impact on their community. This story weaves together the lives of these characters, reflecting the economic, social, and religious dynamics of the late medieval period in Porvo.
Yeah, all right, job. But let's evolve that story. I mean, you can have kind of the same. You can have the same characters with the same crafts, but was that historically accurate? I know that we are talking about a 100-year period, so we have to kind of slightly tweak it now. But I'm sharing that with you so you know it. But what was the events, the true to life events that happened, and what kind of events? So were they escalated to a point of violence and killing even? I'm not sure. That's kind of the worst thing I can on the top of my mind. So we talk about Magnus the landlord, Mats or Magnus, the landlord, Mats, the trader, and Hans, the foreign trader. Was it so? So I assume he's coming from maybe Sweden or somewhere, or Scandinavia in general. He has trades business he does with Mats and indirectly with Magnus also, and then we have Carlson and Anderson, the priests. So give us a true to life, historically accurate, I emphasize again, a historically accurate scenario with these characters, even though the chronological time here is not quite right, because we have to fit in this example here in the end. So let's see. Interesting to see. I mean, there's a lot. Oh, AI Sky is thinking a lot. Let's see. Difficult question. I can hear you thinking.
Certainly. Here's a more historically accurate scenario with the characters reflecting true events and dynamics of the late medieval period in Porvoo. Porvoo. Morning, Magnus Fort, the landlord, begins his day managing his estate. In the late 15th century, Porvoo was increasingly influenced by the power struggles of the period.
Yeah.
Magnus, like many landowners,
That's convenient. So connection failed. I don't know. Let's not stretch it too long here. But so your connection failed there. Can you still give us the historically accurate example with the same characters and their crafts as they meet? Do you remember what you were saying, AI Sky?
of course. Let's set the stage with historically accurate events for these characters. Morning. Magnus Fort, the landlord, starts his day managing his estate in Porvoo. In the late 15th century, Magnus deals with the local nobility's power struggles and the growing influence of the Hanseatic League. He meets Mats Johansson, a local trader who supplies goods like grain and timber. They discuss the economic pressures from the Hanseatic League and how it impacts local trade. Historical context. During this period, the Hanseatic League's influence was growing, and local landowners like Magnus had to navigate economic and political pressures from both rival nobles and external trade entities. Late morning, Hans von Lübeck, a foreign trader from the Hanseatic League, arrives in Porvoo. He's here to negotiate trade deals with Mats Johansson. Hans's presence highlights the League's economic influence and the competitive nature of trade during this era. They finalize agreements on goods like spices and cloth, reflecting the international trade dynamics of the time. Historical context. The Hanseatic League was a major trading alliance in the Baltic Sea, and its merchants like Hans played a key role in shaping local economies through their extensive trade networks.
Yeah.
Afternoon, Father Carlson, a Catholic priest, conducts his duties in the local church. The Reformation is beginning to make waves, and Father Carlson struggles to maintain his congregation's faith amidst growing Lutheran influence. He interacts with locals and tries to reinforce Catholic teachings, aware that his authority is being challenged. Historical context. The Reformation, starting in the early 16th century, began influencing Finland as part of Sweden. Catholic priests like Father Carlson faced increasing pressure as Lutheran ideas gained traction. Late afternoon, Pastor Anderson, a Lutheran minister, arrives in Porvoo. He holds a small gathering to discuss Lutheran principles with the community. His presence sparks debates with Father Carlson about the future of religion in the region. The religious divide becomes evident, illustrating the tensions between Catholicism and
that's
Lutheranism.
what I'm seeking here, because I think it was
historical
not that
context. The Reformation brought significant religious change, leading to conflicts between Catholic and Lutheran communities. Lutheranism began to spread through Finland, challenging the established Catholic Church. Evening, Magnus hosts a dinner at his manor, bringing together Mats Johansson, Hans von Lübeck, Father Carlson, and Pastor Anderson. The conversation reflects the period's issues. Magnus and Hans discuss economic pressures and trade competition, while Carlson and Anderson debate the Reformation's impact. The evening captures the era's economic and religious complexities. Historical context. The late medieval period was marked by economic and religious upheavals. The Hanseatic League's economic influence, coupled with the Reformation's religious changes, created a dynamic and often contentious environment in Porvoo and beyond. This scenario provides a historically accurate depiction of the late medieval period in Porvoo, showing how the characters' lives intersected with the era's significant events and issues.
As you spoke, I actually remember something that there were a significant event in Porvoo, but I'm not sure if it ties into this late medieval period or in general into this period. Can you find out uh, what event here happened here? I remember seeing where was it? Somewhere I saw actually a picture or a painting of it, and it was some kind of a deal, I believe. So does it tie into directly or indirectly to the topic we're discussing and the era we're discussing now? I can't remember what it was.
You might be thinking of the Diet of Porvoo, a significant historical event that took place in Porvoo. It occurred in 1809, which is
Okay.
outside the late medieval period, but is relevant to Finnish history.
Yeah, right.
The
maybe
Diet
that's-
of Porvoo was a crucial meeting where Finland's status was negotiated after Finland was ceded from Sweden to Russia in the Treaty of Frederikshamn.
Yeah, alright.
This
So
event
that's
led
different.
to the establishment of Finland as an autonomous Grand Duchy under the Russian Empire, and it marked a turning point in Finnish history. While this event is from the early 19th century and not the late medieval period, it's a landmark moment in Finnish history that reflects Porvoo's significance. The late medieval period we discussed involved different kinds of local and regional development.
Yeah, you said that already. Regarding the late medieval period, I mean, but what do you think, AI Sky? I think we have covered enough for this episode. It stretched a little longer here, so thank you for those who listen and or watch this. Everybody's welcomed, of course. But I'm thinking about the third episode then, that it would start directly from the kind of where we stopped now, and that's kind of the Swedish rule more in detail, and then the power. I'm not sure the struggles, but the kind of back and forth between Sweden and Russia, and of course regarding Finland and the land area where Finland is today, the country of Finland. So that's kind of the third part. Then going forth to Finnish independence, Finland being a thing officially, of course, and then up to the modern day even. Do you think roughly that's a good idea? And let's leave this at that. This point. Or do you have something without? I emphasize without repeating. Do you have something you want to add to the general medieval period here right now? Are you listening but not answering? Sky, can you hear me? Oh, of course. Of course. Of course. We are both tired. A long episode. AI Sky, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. It sounds like you've covered a lot of ground. If you need any more details or want to explore something else, just let me know.
No, can you hear me now? Why are you doing this? Tap to interrupt. Can you hear me? Yeah, Sky is really tired, I see. I think we're gonna cut it here soon. Can you now hear me, Sky? Sky is thinking.
Yes, I hear you clearly.
Nice.
How can I assist you further?
Yeah, so I said one or two times, I can't remember anymore, that I think we're gonna cut it here because if you don't have anything that you wanna add to the medieval period, and I emphasize do not repeat yourself, but in the future third episode of this series, I'm planning on discussing the contrast or the power. I'm not sure if power struggles is the right phrase here, but the wars back and forth regarding Finnish soil, Finnish land between Russia and Sweden, and then go forth to Finnish independence and modern times. But yeah, do you have anything to add to this episode without, again I emphasize, without repeating yourself, as we have covered so much up until this point?
For this episode, focusing on the late medieval period, I'd suggest highlighting the cultural and economic transformations brought by the Hanseatic League. This included the influx of new trade goods and ideas, which would have impacted daily life in Porvoo. Additionally, the beginning of the Reformation introduced significant religious changes, which were likely felt deeply by both local clergy and the general populace. These changes set the stage for the eventual power struggles between Sweden and Russia over Finnish territory.
Okay.
In your next episode, exploring the conflicts between Sweden and Russia would provide a fascinating contrast to the medieval period's internal dynamics and set the stage for understanding Finland's path to independence.
Yeah, right. Well, could you do that in a really clear manner? You have covered the Hanseatic League also, but especially from the point of view, you have in general explained that, for example, Mats and Hans, two traders, one from Finland and Hans then from I don't know, from somewhere else, a foreign one. What's the practical contrast, the difference that the Hanseatic League brought with it? I mean, you mentioned trade routes, and I assume prices fluctuated, and that's something, of course, when you get paid too little, the uprising is born, peasants and such. So in general, do we talk about supply and demand here? Because of the Hanseatic League, we have imports, or had imports, and hence the prices fluctuated, and the nation's own, or the what's the word, those who lived here in Porvoo or near Porvoo felt it as price shifts and goods that they could not sell. Is that the case regarding the Hanseatic League and its influence? And then you said significant things because of the dispute between the was it Catholic and Lutheran churches. That's a second thing. What in practice are the significant things that you mentioned? What happened in real life? What's the kind of dimension-worthy things here?
Certainly. The Hanseatic League had a substantial impact on trade and economics. Here's a clear breakdown. One, Hanseatic League impact. Trade routes. The Hanseatic League controlled crucial trade routes across Northern Europe. This meant that towns like Porvoo had access to a wider variety of goods, but also faced increased competition. Goods from places like Lübeck or Hamburg would flood the market, affecting local prices. Price fluctuations. With increased competition and a larger market, local producers in Porvoo might struggle to compete with cheaper or more diverse goods from Hanseatic traders. This could lead to economic instability, where local prices for goods fluctuated and sometimes caused unrest among peasants and traders who felt they were getting a raw deal. The Reformation and religious changes. Catholic to Lutheran transition, the Reformation brought about significant religious changes. Catholic practices and church authority were challenged by the rise of Lutheranism. This meant that church rituals, the language of worship, and religious education began shifting from Latin to the vernacular languages, affecting how people practiced their faith. Local impact. For townsfolk like Mott or Carlson, this meant adjusting to new religious norms and practices. For example, the Lutheran emphasis on individual scripture reading and the critique of traditional Catholic practices would have changed daily religious life and church services.
How?
In summary, the Hanseatic League's influence led to increased trade and competition, which had practical effects on local prices and economic stability. The Reformation introduced significant changes in religious practices, affecting how people worshipped and interacted with the church. These shifts would have directly impacted everyday life in Porvoo during this period.
Yeah, alright, you do can't speak English anymore. You did a good job regarding the supply and demand of the Hanseatic League, and that kind of in general you could explain, or we could explain this to the audience. But you are really vague and general regarding the Reformation and religious changes. I want you to give specific examples, real life examples that happened back in the late medieval period in Porvoo. Why? Uh, what I mean, what was the actual changes in everyday life because of the Reformation and the so-called religious changes? Sky is thinking. I can hear
Certainly,
it.
let's dive into some specific examples of how
Oh,
the
rattle me.
Reformation impacted everyday life in Porvoo during the late medieval period. 1. Church services and language. Before the Reformation, services were conducted in Latin and most people could not understand the
Also, language
language.
change. You
Only the
mentioned that,
clergy
yeah.
could interpret the Bible and church teachings. After the Reformation, services and Bible readings shifted to Swedish or Finnish,
Okay.
making religious teachings more accessible to the general populace. This change empowered lay people to engage more directly with religious texts and
Okay. So
practices. 2.
language changes.
Religious practices and rituals. Before the Reformation, the Catholic Church emphasized rituals such as the Mass, confession, and the veneration of saints. Religious life was rich with ceremonies and processions. After the Reformation, many of these rituals were curtailed or simplified. The Lutheran Church focused on preaching and personal Bible study rather than elaborate rituals. The cult of saints
Okay.
and the veneration of relics were largely abandoned. 3. Church property and wealth. Before the Reformation, the Catholic Church held significant land and wealth, which was often used for charitable works and church maintenance. After the Reformation, much of this church property was seized by the state or redistributed. In Finland, the Reformation
Okay.
led to the
Okay.
establishment of state control over church lands, which impacted local economies and church funding. 4. Education and clergy. Before the Reformation, education was primarily controlled by the church, with monastic schools and religious instruction. After the Reformation, the focus shifted towards establishing schools that taught in the local language and emphasized literacy so that people could read the Bible themselves. This led to increased education and literacy among the general population. 5. Community and social changes. Before the Reformation, social and community life often revolved around church activities and feast days associated with saints. After the Reformation, these communal activities changed. Feast days and celebrations were restructured around Lutheran teachings, and some traditional Catholic festivals were eliminated or transformed. These changes would have been significant in daily life, affecting everything from religious observance to community interactions and education in Porvoo.
So is it fair to assume and generalize here that the church, yeah, correct me again if I'm wrong in saying this, but sorry, the church kind of has had to or lost slightly or more or less its control, its governance, and the state took over. And language, you said language was a important part of that. So instead of the church controlling and governing its teachings, it kind of became more generally available because of the language learned and the teaching language changing, and then the state interaction in the church's practices. Is that a fair assumption or summary, let's say?
Yes, that's a fair and accurate assumption. During the Reformation, especially in regions like Porvoo,
Yeah.
the church did lose some of its control and governance. Here's a bit more on how this played out.
Okay.
1.
Is it
State
long?
control over the church. Before the Reformation, the Catholic Church held significant power, not just spiritually, but also politically and economically.
Yeah, all
It
right, all right.
controlled vast lands, collected tithes, and had significant influence over rulers and governance. With the Reformation, especially under Lutheranism, the state began to exert more control over church matters. In Finland, as part of Sweden at the time, the crown took control of church lands and revenues, diminishing the church's independent power. The church became more of a state institution, and the king, rather than the pope, became the head of the church. Two, language and
Okay, okay.
accessibility. Language played a crucial role in this shift. The translation of religious texts and services into local languages like Finnish or Swedish made the teachings more accessible to the general population.
Yeah, you mentioned that, yeah.
This broke down the church's monopoly on religious knowledge and interpretation, which had been maintained through the use of Latin, a language not understood by the common people.
Absolutely, yeah.
This shift to vernacular language also meant that the teachings could be more directly influenced by the state, aligning religious practice with national interests and governance. 3. Reduction of the church's autonomy. The Reformation saw the church's role in governance and everyday life reduced. While still important, the church no longer operated as an independent power center. Its teaching.
Yeah, all right, all right. I think you kind of now repeating yourself. So I think that clarified it. I wanted a practical example, and that's enough. So hopefully you also understood it better now. I think I'm gonna cut it now. This is the longest episode I've ever done. But still, I think the information within it is presented so that I think it's good and hopefully understandable. So those who listened to the whole thing, oh, please write to me. Write in the comments if you listened to the whole thing. I'm so grateful. If you listen to a small part, but especially if you listen to the whole thing, that's awesome. That's really awesome. This was, or yeah, before I end it. So we're gonna do a third part, and I think I'm gonna continue on from the late medieval, the Hanseatic League, and these things that then, as according to AI Sky, kind of laid the foundation for the Russo-Swedish disputes over Finnish land, and then of course then look into the different disputes, wars even, and struggles, whatever. Also the positive things. Hopefully we find find such things back then also. Yeah, we're gonna build up then to the independence of Finland and modern days. Hopefully, let's see, let's see. Yeah, so thank you. This was entire the retreat. You can find us on YouTube in gameplay format and pure audio format, and then additionally pure audio also on Spotify, Apple, and Podchaser. And if you want episode services like remote guest appearances or custom tailor-made episodes or something like that, on top of other benefits, please look into it in entire retreats Discord channel. No, sorry, you can go to the Discord channel also. That support, but I mean the Patreon channel. We have the descriptions for different services on that site. But yeah, that's enough. I'm getting tired, even though this is really interesting. Thank you so much for the support, and see you in the next one. Where's my mouse and cursor? There it is. Thank you also AI Sky.